break it down for
It
everybody.
goes along with stormwater. I mean, you could put these cameras in there, and now you use AI to look at all the cracks and all the codes and things like that are within these pipes, right? Or the manholes. They have MACP, PACP, LACP now, all kinds of PACP stuff out there. But my point was that with sewer AI, they take all that data, they train a model based on the defects. And if the defects are pretty consistent throughout the country, similar type of clay pipe cracks, for example, are all the same, eventually you start to build a model that every time it goes through their system, it'll pick out that image and say, oh, that's the similar crack. And then they give it a score. So once it gets a score, you compile all those scores. Then you can say, okay, well, this pipe is higher risk than the other pipe, et cetera, et cetera. And that's how you kind of build a model, is just gathering all that information.
Hey there, welcome to the Stormwater World podcast. Shout out to our parent company, Digital Stormwater. We're out there making an impact in stormwater one click at a time. We put more stormwater people in front of your stormwater products and services. How we get there is totally up to you. Some of the services that we offer are social media management, Google, LinkedIn, and Meta ads, SEO and content creation, website builds and updates, AI automations, consulting, and a lot more. So the question is who do you know that needs our help? If you're on YouTube, you can click on that QR code to learn more, or you can give us a call at 844-451-2534, or you can visit us at digitalstormwater.com and schedule a call with us today. I'd like to thank everybody that's been listening to this podcast. We appreciate each and every one of you. Let's get back to the episode.
Everybody, welcome back to a new episode of the Stormwater World podcast. I'm excited for today. We've got a little bit different episode for you. We are going to eventually talk about stormwater, so don't worry, all my stormwater warriors and nerds out there. We'll get to it, but I'm excited to have my new friend, I feel like, as we've tried to get together over the last 2 months to do this episode, Mr. Chad Smeltzer with Bidcurement. Chad's got over 15 years of experience in the public works sector, but what makes him so unique is that he is wrapping his arms around the whole public works sector digitally, the way my wife and I are trying to support the stormwater industry from a digital marketing standpoint. And he's just looking at asking the hard questions about technology, why we're doing this, how we could do it better for a plethora of different avenues within the public works sector. He's a serial entrepreneur, and so far in our pre-call, seems like a super nice guy. So Chad, welcome to the podcast. I'm really excited to get to talk to you today.
Ty, thank you for having me, man. This is awesome. It's fun to be the guest side because I have a podcast too, so I know what it's like being the host and things like that. So I apprient what you do.
Yeah. Go ahead. It's early in the pod before everybody leaves. Plug the podcast. What is it? An infrastructure network? Is that the one?
Two things. I started off with the Infrastructure Hot Seat podcast a couple of years ago, and then we built the network where we are putting together other people's podcasts to help them out too. And similar to what you're doing, digital marketing. I don't do the digital marketing stuff like you do, but it's important in our industry because we got to get the message out, right? We got to get our websites up and functioning correctly. We got to get our content out there on social media because people are not aware of what's happening in our industry. And this is what we got to do. If you're not doing it, then none of the people in those communities are going to know what's actually happening and with the infrastructure, as it should say. So this is great.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We got to tell the story. We got to get out there. We got to tell the story. And we got to get it to the people where they can get to it, right? We got to meet them where they're at, right? And I love my stormwater conferences, but not everybody can make it to a conference.
Right.
So here we are. Well, before we talk about stormwater, let's talk about you. Tell me about yourself, about your journey, about Bidcurement. What are you doing? I just feel like, I've been watching you on LinkedIn and seeing everything. I just feel like you're creating this snowball of this huge impact that you're going to have on the public works sector.
Yeah, it's been a journey for sure. I started out of working at public works when I was 15 with my dad at a wastewater treatment facility he ran in Wrightsville, Pennsylvania. And that was my first experience painting curbs, mowing lawns, stuff like that with the utility side. And I realized that I didn't want to be in public works after I was told to clean a sludge tank. It was disgusting. I had rain gear on. I tell people this story. It's like the worst thing you can possibly do is get to a wastewater treatment plant and clean out a sludge tank. And I was like, I'm done with this industry. So I did that for like 3 years in the summer before I graduated high school. And then as soon as I got out of high school, I went right to the workforce. And I just wanted to learn more about business and operations and make money. I mean, that was my thought, right? I just wanted to learn more things and be out there in the field. And sure enough, as I went through I did tree trimming and then went into pest control. And then ironically, I'm giving you the short version here. Pest control led to grease trap maintenance, which led to bacteria treatment.
Of course it did.
Yeah. And
right
back in the sewers again.
It's a total normal path.
So yeah, exactly. So I was like, okay, I'm treating these grease traps while I was doing pest control with these restaurants, and I'm looking at all these nasty grease traps, and I'm back in the nasty stuff again, So I'm like, okay, well, this bacteria was really helping these grease traps, and I thought to myself, well, could we use it in sewer pipes? And that was the thought back then. I was getting kind of burned out with the pest control business. I went to operations manager into sales, and then I was like, okay, I learned enough here for 11 years. I'll start my own company. And then I started using those bacteria plugs is what they were. They basically would hang from a sewer manhole at the top. You put a bar and it would hang like a chain, and it would have these tablets that would release spore state bacteria over a period of time down a pipe. And if it was full of grease, it would help soften it up and keep it, to where it wasn't petrified, in these pipes where they get really built up and they become like your arteries, right? So we started treating with bacteria, and it started working really well. And then I started selling that in my business. I started this company called EPS Products. So I traveled along the East Coast working with WSSC, Washington, D.C. It was D.C. Water back then, or something else now maybe, but I would just go pop manholes, start putting in these treatment spots. I sold some contracts with these cities to Harvard MDC, and I even went to New York, tried to pitch them on using it. They gave me the Crisco test back in the day. Is what they would do is they take a jar or something, put Crisco in it, and then they put the bacteria in it. They test out products that way. I was like, and it doesn't work that way, right? So that was like my first experience as a startup and I'm back in the sewer world again, or public works in the utility space. That was back in 2009, something like that, 2010, right when the crisis happened. I started a company. That was crazy.
So what happened to that? So that company, you left it, you sold it?
So I partnered with Duke's Root Control at the time. I think it's Duke's Innovation now. So they were helping me, kind of introduce me to their clients. They were interested in the bioremediation field too, because they were doing root control in sewers. And then I was doing the bacteria treatment in sewers. And then I was trying to obviously get them to use my product to help their clients with their problems, right? To grow the business faster, right? And then I ended up getting hired by them. They were like, hey, look, we love you. We want to bring you on. We think you're a great guy, whatever. And they just brought me on, and they kind of bought out the company, which I messed up the company because I did things wrong when
it was your first one. It was your first one.
I'm like flying around to Houston, Chicago, trying to sell biotabs everywhere, these things. I was like, yeah, I got this. This is great. But yeah, I should have stayed where I was locally there in Pennsylvania and just grew the business locally instead of trying to hit those big cities. And then, you burn a lot of cash and you learn a lot, but that's part of entrepreneurship. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So then
what's next after that?
Yeah.
So we're around 2010, 11.
Yeah. So 2011, they shipped me to Chicago, said, hey, we need someone to run the Midwest territory. One of the guys was retiring. So I was like, cool, I'll run the territory. I ran 6 states. I covered 6 states, mostly Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Iowa. And then just traveled, met public works directors, engineering firms, talked about root control, talked about grease control and sewers. And then in 2016, I started seeing this trend of like the data, and that's where this tech stuff started built. Like in my mind is like, okay, we have an issue here with the engineering firms and the utilities didn't know exactly where their sewers were, going to fail or clog or back up. They didn't have a real good maintenance procedure and stuff like that. They didn't have a good infrastructure management system, really. And then I'm like pitching it to Dukes again. I'm like, hey, we got, and the Dukes guys were saying the same thing. Everyone was kind of consistently talking about the same problem where there was a lack of maintenance and a lack of knowledge about their systems, and they were just throwing darts at the dartboard for like what they needed to fix in the sewers. So we came up with this concept to do, a triage concept, and those guys were very influential in creating this concept. So I decided that, okay, well, we have all this robotic camera equipment, we have all this data. Why don't we start a company? At the time, the owners of Dukes didn't want to venture outside the box, so to speak, of root control. So I started a company with Michelle Herod, who was the founder of Midwest Water at the time, back in 2016. So her and I just started pitching ideas. Her husband too, Gary. We started getting together, started coming up with ways that we could help improve that process of managing infrastructure more efficiently. So we created this system called Dashboard Dynamics, which was basically taking all the sewer data with the cameras that you drop in the manholes, the panorama camera from, I forget the name of the company, but we had the Envirosite camera. We had a couple different cameras. I'm not sure exactly which ones they were at the time, but we would just collect the data and start putting on dashboards and start analyzing it. And then we knew what the repairs were because we were all making those repairs. So we'd fix manholes. For example, that's how we started. So we'd analyze the manholes, give back all the feedback to the utilities and the engineering firms, say, hey, here's where we're finding all these manholes that are in bad shape. You should fix them. Then we'd fix them for the utilities too. So we were kind of a find and fix process. So it worked out really well. Business grew. We had 26 employees, something like that by 3 years. The proof of concept basically was really successful. And then Dukes bought that company too.
Well, that's nice. Yeah. That's convenient, right? That doesn't always happen.
Yeah. So it worked out really well. I mean, we built something that is, similar to sewer AI. I'm pretty sure everyone's kind of familiar with that now, but we didn't have the software.
I'm not. So if you want to explain it to me, I'm that kindergartner that, explain me to, just in case there may be somebody else listening that doesn't know either. So go ahead and just kind of break it down.
It goes along with stormwater. I mean, you put these cameras in there and now you use AI to look at all the cracks and all the codes and things like that are within these pipes, right? Or the manholes, they have MACP, PACP, LACP, now all kinds of PACP stuff out there. But my point was that with sewer AI, they take all that data, they train a model based on the defects. And if the defects are pretty consistent throughout the country, similar type of clay pipe cracks, for example, are all the same, eventually you start to build a model that every time it goes through their system, it'll pick out that image and say, oh, that's the similar crack. And then they give it a score. So once it gets a score, you compile all those scores. Then you can say, okay, well, this pipe is higher risk than the other pipe, et cetera, et cetera. And that's how you kind of build a model, is just gathering all that information. It's pretty significant, though, to train a model like that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's a lot of manual effort that can be done now, basically instantaneously.
Yeah.
So all you nerds out there, don't get it confused with ChatGPT. It's not what we're talking about. That's a large language model as far as AI goes. I mean, sewer AI, it's just what, they're compiling large data sets against a trainable set of, if-thens, basically. If then that, and then it's spitting out a result and then prioritizing the pipes, it sounds like, based on highest risk to lowest risk, so you can better appropriate your capital, your budget, right? Yeah. So you can spend the correct dollars on the pipes that are going to fail first.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. So that leans into kind of basically where you are today, maybe. Do you want to? Is that a good shift into Bidcurement, or is there some more pieces of the puzzle?
Yeah, there's a lot of pieces of the puzzle. This thing's been tell you, entrepreneurship is not for the faint of hearts, man. It's a ride.
You're telling me.
Yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I'm new. I'm gonna call you. I'm gonna lean on you. It's like I tell everybody else. There's the days, right, when you're on top of the world. And then there's the days where you're in the fetal position going, what am I doing?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is a humbling experience, and I encourage people to do it. Honestly, I think it's entrepreneur. I know we kind of jumped off track here, but entrepreneurship is
that's all right.
It's a great place to learn so many things and gather so much experience so fast that you basically get your own degree. I call it Street Smart University, because you just invest in yourself and you invest in the opportunities that you're given. and you execute on it or you don't, and you learn from it if you don't, right? So it either grows or
YouTube, like YouTube University. That's what people ask me. Like, where did you get to? I'm like, oh, I got a degree in Google and YouTube.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. You can learn a lot nowadays on those channels. I mean,
man, yeah.
There's so much.
That's funny
content.
So what's the next piece of the puzzle before we get to Bidcurement?
Yeah, so that's where Bidcurement kind of came from. I would say once I was dealing with going to these projects, bidding on these projects, obviously, and looking at the specifications to see if we could bid on those projects during my time at RMS as we were building out that company, I just realized there was a huge problem with redundant specifications, old specifications that are being not updated. There would be a lot of copy and pasting in those specifications. And I just started realizing that, wow, this is a big problem because even the contractors wouldn't even read them, half those specs, right? We only had certain things we wanted to look at, and we would just do that because we didn't want to have to spend all the time going through the nonsense. I used to say the redundancy of these specs because they just made no sense half the time. So that's where Bidcurement kind of came to my mind, especially during COVID. We were dropping off bid packages outside City Hall in a manila envelope. You know, I was like, why are we still dropping off manila envelopes? It's 2020. I mean, come on, right? So that just sparked in my head, look, there's got to be a better way to, write specifications and bid on projects more efficiently and understand more about these projects, because the more you know, the better you can price it, the better you can actually, better your odds of winning that project, right? So there was no tech out there that really was doing that. There was nothing out there. There was, I think there was a couple bid aggregate services out there like BidOcean back in the day. There was BidSync now or whatever, BidNet. I mean, I bet you there's thousands of these bid aggregate services out there. I'm probably not that many, but you know what I'm saying? And it was always hard to find these bids too. That's the other thing. You could never find these bids.
Right.
So you end up missing out on a lot of bids. The specifications were a hot mess, and these projects weren't getting done. Change orders were happening constantly. The whole procurement system in general in a public space and utility space, and on the public side too, the private side is just as well. They have a lot of issues with the procurement processes with subcontractors, contractors, things like that. So long story short, that's where Bidcurement kind of came to my mind. I was like, okay, well, we're using all this technology, these robot cameras. We're using now we have I guess, what would I say, just we have this tech now of writing documents faster, right? We have all these things that are out there now that we can consolidate into one kind of procurement solution to help vendors understand these projects better. And that's where Bidcurement started, to design a software to use video technology to be able to help those utilities procure services and goods faster. I mean, it's really what it came out to. And now we're into effective computing, emotion AI. Like I'm moving the company in a new direction, which is to improve the procurement process. But I'm also helping and working with a company called Maze of Life, where they need help building out a technology for basically mental health, social services, things like that for the government side, where people are mandated coming out of the justice system. I know this kind of doesn't make sense right now, but it will. To where they need help with social services, and that industry has a problem because they're not getting provided the right mental health services. So this company, Maze of Life, is like, hey, can we figure out a way to provide technology to where we can help people that are mandated from court orders to come out of the system, so to speak, and we can help them with our what they call CAMS program. It's a Certified Anger Management Specialist. So they have these coaches that come out. They really help dig into the problems with the person that they're providing consulting services for, right? It's a matter of helping them in a new way instead of just death by PowerPoint. So
right.
Because
I got you.
That's typically what would happen is you sit down, a counselor or somebody you go to anger management class, you sit down, you look at this PowerPoint, they just walk you through it. You would never get help. Where this company is looking to actually help someone like, hey, where does this anger come from? Start to really learn more about the person versus the, just putting a PowerPoint up there and hopefully.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
Man, you're all over the place, Chad.
I know it sounds like it, right? But this all ties back into procurement.
Comes back to.
Because if you think about it, the RFP process is so long and time consuming. If we have a system that can actually accelerate that RFP process within days versus months, that's where I'm heading. That's where I'm pushing this forward, and using the different types of tech that I'm helping obviously Maze of Life with, but bringing it back to procurement as well. Because if we can start to understand those services that are being provided, those materials, because let's face it, in procurement, there's a lot of biasness. There's a lot of established relationships. There's a lot of, I hate to say it, but corruption. I mean, let's face it. There's a lot of that goes on in our space, and there's billions of dollars at stake, right? And we're kind of just not tracking the money, so to speak, that kind of thing. So,
oh no, yeah.
There's a lot of issues.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I spent the last 12 years or whatever selling stormwater compliance software to entities, to cities.
Yeah.
Anybody that that's holding an MS4 permit, and the procurement, the process is just, it's all over the place, and it's archaic.
Yeah. Archaic is the word
for the most part.
Yeah.
I still had one city that still required triplicate wet signature. After all said and done, they sent me 3 copies of everything.
Yep.
I was like, what? They're like, oh yeah, we need your signature, and then send this copy here, send this copy here, and then you can keep a copy.
Crazy, right?
I was like,
yeah. And we're still doing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, all right.
Yeah.
All right. So then, when do you want to kick off your software training? after we push this these hard copies around the world. Anyways, that's ironic to me, right?
Yeah.
But that's so then, all right. So keep going, because I want to kind of understand, like, because I just see you from the LinkedIn side, right? Like, we just met.
Yeah.
You've got all this stuff going on. And so then somewhere in there, the infrastructure network comes up, like your own podcast comes up.
Yeah.
So you start that, and then you start to help, and you create other podcasts, which I've been seeing within the public works space. So you want to talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah.
And we'll try to circle back around and wrap it into some more stormwater.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah.
Maybe.
We'll definitely get back to stormwater, because I have some comments about we were talking about undersizing of storm systems and stuff like that. So I can't wait to talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
All
so
right.
yeah. So going back to like your comment about the 3 copies, things like that. Procurement is just like we said, it's very complex. It doesn't need to be that complex, and we're looking to simplify that with technology. Is really where we're heading. And the goal with this is to grow into an advertising space, right? So procurement opportunities have to be advertised legally. But they're still putting it in classified newspaper ads.
Right.
Who's reading that?
Yes.
Come on.
Check the box. We did it.
So,
we put it in the paper.
So I had to learn more about social media. I had to learn more about the platforms that are out there, right? So how these social media algorithms work, and I don't think we're putting out procurement opportunities at all on social media. I don't see any. Do you? I rarely.
No, I've never. No.
But there's
job opportunities.
People checking their phone.
Not bid opportunities.
People are checking their phones 2 to 3 hours a day, scrolling social media, but no one's advertising procurement opportunities there. So I had to learn more about how these YouTube channels work, Facebook, LinkedIn, things like that. And that's where the podcast thing, my wife was like, hey, why don't you start a podcast? Because I felt like I was so focused on learning how to build software first. And I put myself through an accelerator program for business. I took a sales SaaS class for several weeks. So in 2021, late 2020, I was just educating myself on these systems and how to build business, stock, equity, just really kind of getting my MBA without an MBA degree because you have to learn this stuff, right? So I put myself through all that 2021, but then I realized the podcast, I need to get back connected to the industry because I was pretty much disconnected and I wasn't, able to provide any more value to the space. And that's where I started doing the Infrastructure Hot Seat podcast. And that's where I started to figure out, well, okay, we can start getting our messages out there. We can start educating people on public works directors, like what they need, what's going on in those cities that they're working in. And it's similar to what you're doing, right? It's that, content, get that content out there because you're looking at that civil infrastructure funding gap, $2.6 trillion, right? The only way we're going to get constituents in these communities to understand that there's a massive problem is social media. The people are on there constantly. I mean, they're not, that's the best place to be, right? I mean, on the marketing side. So I just wanted to learn more and do the podcast, provide more value. And then I started into the infrastructure network, which was like, well, man, why can't we get everybody on one system? And then we can start really generating content together and talking about the same stuff. Let's talk about why we need to disrupt this vertical, whatever it is, because in utilities, you have water, sewer, storm, you have all these different segmented categories, so to speak, and those utilities. So if we can all start sending out the message like, hey, stormwater, for example, hasn't been looked at forever. And now recently in the last 3 to 4 years, people are actually starting to take notice that stormwater systems need attention, right? They're flooding everywhere,
right?
Right. So getting out that message and doing it with a bunch of us together is kind of my thought process of why I started the Infrastructure Network and have a bunch of podcast channels and all of us put together in there.
That's cool. Very cool. Very cool. And so how's that going? How many people are on the Infrastructure Network? So how long have you been doing it? How long? So you said, I think when we talked pre-show, the hot seats, Infrastructure Hot Seats is 3 years in.
Yeah, the hot seats started late 2022, so it's a year and a half or so, something like that. And then the Infrastructure Network was in January 2023, so that's a little over a year now.
Okay. That's when I started this.
Okay.
I started the Stormwater World podcast in January 23.
Yeah. So
wait, right? Yeah.
You're thinking the same way I was or am, right? Of we got to get our message out there. We got to connect with people differently now, because traditionally, as you know, if you're in sales, driving around the public works department is to just drive around the public works department. It gets old real fast.
Right. Oh no. Yeah. I mean, you talk to business owners and they need the support, right? And they're busy. And, but if I were to say, hey, I think your website sucks, do you want a new one? They'd be like, get out of here. Right. Like get out of your spammer.
Right.
But if I ask that same person, hey, would you like to come on my podcast and tell your story? They're like, absolutely, right? An opportunity for exposure, then everybody wins. And then during the course of that, I'm like, okay, well, hey, that's my gateway drug.
Yeah.
We also do these other things. If you're interested, would like to take a look. And most people are like, yeah, they'll at least take a look and let us do an evaluation and see if we can help them out and see if it's a good fit. But to kind of go back to what you were saying about stormwater again, I think it's ironic, maybe. I don't know the right word, but like you said, over the last few years, people were paying a little bit more attention because of the flooding, right? So, which I mean is true, applicable. I know, because you're within infrastructure, but for me, and where I come from, in my mind, of stormwater as a whole, it goes back to not just the flooding aspect, but water quality.
There you go.
And clean water. And the lack of public knowledge. So right now we're trying to lift the industry from a lot of different aspects. Like our goal, put more stormwater people in front of your stormwater stuff, right? But then we also have an ultimate goal of making an impact in stormwater one click at a time.
Yep.
And then for me, it's not a catchphrase. It may have been at first when I thought about it, but I want to expand outside of the echo chamber that is the stormwater industry. And how do we get the average Joe? Because the average person doesn't say stormwater.
Right.
They say it's raining or my house is flooding. Somebody come save me. right? What is going on? What, I'm mad at the city. Somebody needs to come trench out and clean out that channel, the canal, whatever. But they don't say, oh, stormwater. Oh, I shouldn't put those glass drippings down the drain because it's going to create algae blooms and runoff and all the oil and different garbage and chemicals and everything. We don't think like that. The average person doesn't think like that, right? And then you probably run it to like when people, hey, what do you do? And you start to explain it, they're just kind of their eyes kind of gloss over. If I say anything about stormwater, they're like, what?
Yeah.
And so, step one is to help lift the industry in a whole. But then in the background, it's always like, how do we now turn the messaging around to get it to the public?
Right.
And for them to care other than when their yard or their house is flooded. They just need to care in general because water is going to become this crazy commodity.
Yeah.
It already is.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Anyways, that's my rant. Let me get back off my soapbox. This is your episode, sir.
No, man, it's good. It's good. You're right on the money,
yeah,
man.
so
stormwater is just like I said. You got all this runoff. And it's all going right into our streams and rivers. And you look at the Paris Olympics right now, right? It's going on. They're jumping in sewage. They're jumping in sewage. Did you see that?
Yeah. No, well. I honestly hadn't watched a bunch of it, but I saw the lead up to it, where all the drama about it in general, and my wife could speak on it more. She looked at it more, but I couldn't imagine as a high level athlete. They're going through a lot of stuff over there, but it's just these highest level athletes. Like, oh, and here I bet you didn't have poop water on your bingo card, but you get to add that to see how tough you are. Get in there, swim.
Right. We're still having so much of issues, for lack of a better word, with this over just spillages into waterways, oceans and rivers, streams, things like that. We're not capturing the problem. We're not fixing the problem. It doesn't seem like it just keeps getting worse. Right. So what are we doing with those dollars? Really, really, that's what I think about that. I'm like, okay, cause you and I are in that space. We understand it, but now I'm like, okay, well, how are we not using the tech or the right materials or the right something, upgrading the sizes of these systems? You're doing whatever we got to do to fix them. Right. Where's that money going?
Right.
Right. And it makes you wonder. It makes you really wonder.
So is that the kind of like, did you want to go further into that? Is this a good spot to switch over to stormwater? And you said you had some feelings that you wanted to make sure got expressed.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, that would come down to specs. I and you and I talked about, we'll just dive into it. Might as well, right? But we were just watching the specifications of these projects back in 2017, and they were undersizing a lot of the pipes. Stormwater pipes. And we were looking at it like, why are they putting in 10, 12-inch pipe when they should be like 24, 28, 48? One of the places we were messing around with sensors, this is one of my stormwater stories. In, what town was it? Up here in northern Illinois, there was a town. They were having flooding in this residential area. They had a 48-inch storm pipe coming down from a residential neighborhood. It was teeing into another 48-inch that was dropping into a retention pond, right? Yeah. So this neighborhood kept getting flooded. So what I did is I took these level sensors, started putting them in every manhole on that 48, both lines, T sections and, coming down out of the residential area. And we just looked at the trends over a period of time. And what we realized, they undersized the catch basins pipes that were going into the 48. So they undersized that so it wasn't draining fast enough to get into the 48 because the 48 never overflowed. It always still had a little bit of capacity. Even if it had a couple inches, it still had a couple inches. But they didn't design correctly the catch basins to actually flow faster into that 48 to get all the capacity out of it. And that was undersizing infrastructure. We keep not to say that was the case there, but it was. I mean, you start to see these different specs and sizes of pipes. You're like, well, why would you do that when you should be a much bigger pipe size going into those areas, especially now, like you said, with the monsoons and storms we're getting, you're getting inches and inches of rain in hours, right? So,
Oh yeah, it just doesn't like I mean I can't speak for the whole country, but here in Southeast Texas, it just does not know how to rain right. I mean, we just get pounded. It's either ungodly amounts of rain in a short amount of time, or you know, scorched earth.
right.
I mean, like literally last year when we were running those 100 degree days straight, and I mean it literally there was a magnolia tree. It was actually on the easement in our front yard, and the city ended up cutting it down. Unfortunately, I thought it might come back. I mean, it looked like it might come back, but I'm trying to be an optimist.
Yeah.
Man, that thing was burnt. A whole magnolia tree just
Wow.
like it, not it, and it's sad. It's not like it got set on fire. It just literally just cooked and browned out. It's no, the weather's just been crazy,
Yeah.
absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, that
well, I didn't want to steer you away if you had another
No.
thought about Bidcurement or the process or what's going on with your podcast, but I know you wanted to touch on some stormwater, and so I went on my rant.
that was what I was.
So I thought that was a good opportunity
Yeah.
for you to
Yeah.
jump in there as well.
Yeah, so
Um,
kind of going back to like that's the stormwater story. That's the kind of thought I have about stormwater is, we have to really start looking at the designs of these systems that we have and where they're flowing, and come up with solutions on how to capture the debris that's coming out of these systems that are going into the waterways, and what kind of
Are
treatment.
you doing any work on the green side, like with tech and like green infrastructure and low impact development in combination with, are you seeing any of that in your world with
I
in travels
haven't.
with,
Yeah, I haven't. I haven't really focused on that side of the tech, which is a whole nother world of entrepreneurship. If anybody wants to get into it, I would advise heavily on that because
they're out there.
yeah, it's available, man. That's where everyone's going to start moving because you have to. You just really have to because all this, like we were just saying, is you still have all this sewage overflowing and things like that going in these waterways.
So how do people work with you? Like, it is Bidcurement, like how do people get their bids up using your services, or you want to explain a little bit of
Yeah.
that? I know you've got to jump to another pod, so I want to be able to get all the information out
Sure.
there.
Yeah. No.
Normally I just keep talking,
No.
but we do. But yeah, how does it actually work if somebody's interested? Like, hey, cool, I want to know more.
Yeah.
What would they do?
So we're still in beta testing, believe it or not. It's been years, but we're still drilling down all the components that we need to put into this thing because when we first launched our MVP back in 2020 or 2021, I should say.
That's okay for all you non-tech
All right.
people. MVP, it's a minimal viable product. Minimal viable product. I got you, Chad.
Yeah,
Go
thank you,
ahead.
thank you. So the MVP we designed
They're
in
gonna
20.
be like, what?
Yeah.
What?
What's
Most
this guy
valuable
talking
player? Like, what is he talking about? What's this dude talking about? So
Yeah.
they're minimal viable products, so they could start testing.
Yeah.
Anyways,
we started doing feedback loops and testing it out, and we made mistakes. And here's what we did because I didn't know what I didn't know about software until now. When you build software, you have to have the right frameworks, you have the right coders, you have to have the right things in place. It's just like starting a business and you don't do it correctly, right? It's the same thing building software. You have to do it correctly. So we had to restart everything. And what I did do is go back to doing it manually and working with the city of Toledo, Ohio. We are now using video procurement as a way to manually basically record bidders for the procurement opportunity. So they're responding back to the city and saying, hey, I'm interested in this bid. Here's what I can provide. And then we send the city basically a list of all the vendors we think are best value for that procurement opportunity. And then we record everything. And then we break down analyze all the data within that interview. And all that content. We do background checks on the vendors. So we process all that data. And then we hand the utility all the procurement data that they need about those contractors that are going to bid on their projects. And we're still drilling down a lot of that process and a lot of those components with that. But that's where we're at. We're literally handing them with AI. Now we're starting to grow into AI, where we're just providing them really good intelligence about that contractor so that they can make a better decision.
And you're doing that. You said you're doing that manually right now.
Right now, we're building the
right.
We're
yeah, right. Yeah. No, you got to no. You got to have You got to figure out what the data points are before you can teach the software. Man, that's amazing. Where are you located? Are you in Ohio?
I'm in Chicago, outside in Aurora, Illinois.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right, my son lives in Chicago. I lived in Chicago for 5 years, 93 to 98.
Okay.
So, but Ohio, like if you're doing work in Ohio, just a side note, there's a really great stormwater conference every May.
Okay.
If you're not already familiar with it, the Ohio Stormwater Conference.
I'm not.
You may want to, I can send you some info on it. Love to see you as a speaker there. We always go. It's a well-run show and it's a well-attended show.
Yeah.
For that area, especially if you're already working with Toledo.
Yeah. Yeah. We're just getting ready to meet with them again as a follow-up, because this is another, just beta testing it. And like you said, just drilling down all the processes right now, because you don't want to, and anyone that wants to start a software, build technology in this space, which you can, there's a lot of opportunities here. You need to understand how to develop software correctly and find the right people to do that and do it manually first. Create a business that makes money manually and then create a technology on top of that. So that's some
that's the hard, that would definitely be like, so I tell people I'm doing it the hard way, because like digital marketing and then stormwater industry is just such a tough industry, and like it's a slower moving animal and whatnot.
Yeah.
But manually building something and then skinning it over the top with software that's definitely hard mode, but I could see where it could actually be cost effective. Like, let me ask you, and this is going to get a little off the stormwater subject, but I mean, it's my podcast. Right. I want to know. So are you bootstrapping all this? Are you partnered with another company for Bidcurement? Yeah. So when you're not, okay, kids, when you're not going out there for funding rounds and you don't want investors in your business and you're trying to change the world, build it manually and then figure out how to do the software. Because if you're going to go straight software, then you're going to have to iterate, and then the software is going to, the frameworks are going to change. They're going to upgrade. They're going to move from one, language to another language, and then with AI. So you're going to spend a lot of money, and you're going to need some funding to be able to have the wherewithal. But if there's repetitive processes out there that you can figure out and pull the data out, like what Chad and his team are doing, you could absolutely create software around it. So kudos to you for taking that avenue.
Thanks.
That's not easy. It
is not easy. We're actually getting funded, which is awesome.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, there you go. Well, congratulations.
Literally 3 years into this grind, and we're getting funded finally. So it's been a blessing.
Well, that'll make things a little bit, that might move the needle a little faster for you then. That's great.
Yeah. We didn't go the VC route. We found a partner that that's the Maze of Life we talked about earlier, and we're partnering with them to build their technology out and
right. Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. So
perfect.
it was just
awesome.
Great timing and ties into exactly what we all want to do. So now I have a board of directors that are joining Big Curement. I have all the things moving in the right place. I got a team now, a tech team built over the last 3 years.
That's amazing. Yeah. Oh man,
I built it on LinkedIn.
Cool. That's very cool. Did you?
Didn't travel anywhere. Just build it on LinkedIn. Just it goes back to digital.
That's a testament right there. Yeah. Just putting out the content. Yeah, I see a lot of your content. Since shout out to Jeff Manzik with R.A. Smith up there in Appleton, Wisconsin. He's the one who put us together.
That's awesome. Yeah.
But he's a good dude. And then once he introduced us, I've been following you, and you've got a lot of great content. So everybody should definitely follow Chad Smeltzer on LinkedIn. I will put all his links in the show notes where you can find him. And if you've got any links to where if a public works director or somebody in public works can get their public works director to start up a podcast, you have some links that you can share with me that I can put in the show notes, or you want to speak real briefly on how they can reach out to you, the best way to get in touch with you for that?
Yeah, the best way is LinkedIn, obviously, Chad Smeltzer. Just look me up. You'll find me there. That's the best way to reach out. My email is chad@bigcurement.com. So if anybody wants to reach out that way. But to go back to, if you got a couple more minutes, Ty,
Yeah, absolutely. I'm here for
I
you,
like
man.
running up to 10 o'clock. I'll be at my next podcast. No worries. I'll be warmed up, ready to go for that podcast. But I think what you're doing, Ty, is super important because we need to get that message out there, and digital marketing is a way for us to really do that and improve our websites, as you were kind of talking about before, is helping these utilities get their websites updated and corrected. They should actually have their own channels. I think the utilities should, like a stormwater channel. They should all have their own media channel, because that's going to be a source for their constituents to go to and learn more about stormwater, for example, even sewer systems, stuff like that, sanitary sewers. Those are key ways of interacting with constituents. So what you're doing is really helpful. And the podcast, obviously getting that content out there is really valuable as well. So
Appreciate
doing
that.
big things, man. Yeah.
we're so started the company, our marketing company part-time 2019, end of 2019. So I try to check myself, like, really only real since March of this year, right?
Yeah.
When I finally cut ties and went full time. So it's like, baby steps. But we're just trying to serve these people, and so keep the main thing, which is just making that impact, cleaner water, and putting people in front of the products that need to be speccing these products. And I think we'll be on the right path. But
Yeah.
I feel like, you and me, we got some conversations that we had, outside this podcast. I feel like I definitely would like to work with you on some stuff, regardless of how that looks. I just think we definitely got to keep in touch, man. We're too close to the same synergy to not do something together.
And it goes back to the network, where I want you guys to come on. You and your wife come on. We'll have sit down. Like, I love doing live events now, stuff like that too. We can talk about working together on some live events. I love doing that stuff.
Oh, actually, in IRL and in real life, in real life live events. Oh yeah, I'm down. I mean, I'm interested in all the things. Like, you should check out Stormwater Awareness Week. They do a great it's free to the public, free to people to do workshops.
Okay.
That's an awesome opportunity. StormwaterAwareness.org. That those folks are putting on. But yeah, man, I think that'd be great. Yeah, we'd love to come on the podcast. I mean, I'd love to come on the podcast. My wife is she is 100% self-proclaimed introvert, but she'd be happy to come on. She's a civil engineer, so she can bring some. She can offset my lack of being an engineer.
Yeah,
We'll compliment
me
it
too.
well.
She can help us both
But
out.
man, right. We can put our YouTube universities up against her civil engineer and have a heck of a time together.
Right.
Final thoughts, man. Anything that we missed? Anything that you want to put out there to folks? I mean, we have such a it's such a niche audience, but they are all that they have to touch public works. So anything you want to share?
Yeah, that's so I would say, look, get uncomfortable with with what's happening in digital revolution right now. It's basically what's happening, right? Everything's transitioning. You're getting in engineering, right? Everything's going to generative AI, where they're designing infrastructure so much faster now, right? So don't be afraid of technology. Adopt technology. Start to learn how to use it. Get uncomfortable with using social media. It's not fun to just put yourself and record yourself talking about like stormwater problems, but the more you talk about it, and the more you do it, the more comfortable you'll get. But
right,
it's.
And I need to do more of it.
It's a great tool, though. I mean, social media is a massive tool that you can get out your content, and just don't be afraid to get uncomfortable and adopt the technology. Start to use the technology and improve your processes. I mean, that's really where we're moving towards. And if you're looking to be an entrepreneur, it's a great time to start looking at that. I encourage that all the time, because there's so much opportunity in this space that needs disruption. I hate to say it that way, but the traditional ways of doing this stuff is quickly going away, so to speak. And digital revolution's happening, and it's a great time to start a company and do what we're doing, just fixing things.
I agree. I agree 100%. Do not be afraid of AI. Do not think it's going to replace you. Look to see how you can leverage it to make you better.
That's it. You got it, man.
Like any other tool. Not going to come get you. It doesn't have sums.
That's it.
You're good. we're still on top of the food chain. Just use it as a tool, as it was designed.
Yeah. It is a tool.
Man, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I look forward to keeping in touch with you. And good luck and good luck on your next meeting, your next podcast. Yeah. Have a great weekend. All the things.
You too, my man. Thank you so much for having me. I truly appreciate it. Thank you to the audience as well.